What if I told you your relationship with God impacts every relationship in your life, whether you believe in Him or not? Think about it. The way you love, trust, and connect with others is shaped by what you believe in something bigger than yourself. If you think God is distant and punishing, you might expect the same from people. But if you think He's loving and forgiving, maybe you extend more grace. And if you don't believe at all, well, that shapes things too. So today we're diving into something big. How does your connection or disconnection with God impact your relationships? I grew up Catholic, went to church every Saturday night with my grandfather, which I hated. I just did not want to go. My sisters never had to go, my cousins never had to go, but I always had to go with Pop to Mass. It wasn't until years later that I understood why, and that was because when I was 3 months old, my mother passed away, and I was considered very lucky and just a luck to be around. So my pop always took me to church with him because he kind of thought that I was a gift from God. But for me, those Saturday night Mass was all about putting the 20 cents on the collection plate. That was it. Once I knew that 20 cents went on the collection plate, Mass was just about over. So that got me excited and I was very happy about it. But I also went to Catholic schools, wore the uniform, went to Mass, had to memorize prayers, the whole 9 yards. And the best thing that I loved about that was I got to debate my religion teacher. Not because I hated God, but because I hated the idea that someone else could tell me what my relationship with God should look like. Like he was locked up in a building, only available to those who followed the rules. Like the church was where you went if you wanted to talk to God. If you had to follow a checklist to be worthy of his attention, I didn't buy it. That just didn't sit right with me. In my opinion, religion and God are not the same thing. Religion's a system, something built by people. But God is bigger than any system. That relationship you're supposed to have with him, it's personal. No priest, pastor, or spiritual guru can hand it to you. You've got to go and find it for yourself. For many years, I didn't know or have a relationship with God. I never spoke to him or sought out his guidance. I was very much against organized religion. But that changed when my wife gave me 3 books, Conversations with God, Part 1, 2, and 3 by Neale Donald Walsch. Now, I'll tell you, those books sat on my shelf for ages, with my wife nagging me all the time, just read them, you'll like them, read them. Until one day she got the shits with me, took my phone off me, took the remote control off, and said, I want you to sit there and read that book for the next 45 minutes. Just like I was some naughty schoolboy who didn't want to do his homework. But looking back, I am so grateful she made me read them, because those books were exactly what I needed to hear or read. Now, I'm not going to do a book review. Maybe one day I will. But my point here is, after reading them, I now understood that I could have faith and have far more personal relationship with God. A relationship that was much different to the one that the church demanded. I felt much better about life now because I understood how my relationship with God could work. And once you start realizing that, you begin to see the truth about yourself. How you see God often mirrors how you see yourself. If you see God as judgmental and distant, then you're probably going to be harder on yourself than you need to be. You might struggle with guilt, feel like you're never good enough, and constantly try to earn love. Whether from people or from God, you become so obsessed with proving your worth that you miss the point entirely. But on the flip side, if you believe in a God of grace, it's a lot easier to extend the same grace to yourself. You don't feel like you have to prove anything. You start seeing yourself as valuable, just as you are. And if you don't believe in God, You're still looking for that worth somewhere. You might not have a name for it, but you're going to keep searching. That search for worth and validation, it's never going to go away, no matter what you're chasing. This is why your relationship with God is so tied to how you view yourself. If you don't have a greater source of love, you're left trying to measure your value based on external things, success, appearances, what others think of you. And trust me, that's a dangerous place to be. When your worth is tied to those external factors, you'll never feel like you're enough. You're always measuring yourself by a standard that is constantly shifting. It's exhausting and it's unsustainable. But here's the good part. When you start seeing yourself as worthy without having to earn it, that completely changes how you love others. It changes the way you show up in relationships, whether it's with friends, family, or a romantic partner. Because if you believe love is something you have to earn, you're always going to struggle. You'll find yourself keeping scores, protecting yourself, and wondering why you never feel fully loved. And that's not love. That's a transaction. Love isn't a trade. It's not, I love you if you do this. It's, I love you, period. When you start to believe in unconditional love, whether from God, the universe, or whatever name you give it, you become more willing to offer the same unconditional love to others. I used to think love was something that I had to prove. I thought that people would only love me if I was successful, if I was useful, or if I was impressive. But once I stopped seeing love as something to earn and started seeing it as a gift, everything started to change. My relationships improved. My views of myself changed. I stopped feeling like I had to chase love, and instead, I started letting it flow. And that brings me to trust. Trust isn't just about relationships, it's about life. When you can't trust, you feel like everything is in chaos. Everybody's out to get you. Every failure feels like it's the end of the world. Every setback feels like it defines you. You now become a loser. But trust is rooted in faith. If you believe in something bigger than yourself, you're able to lean into that faith. You can believe that things aren't just happening to you, they're happening for you, even when you can't see how. But if you don't have that belief, every little setback feels like a disaster. Every disappointment feels like the end of the world. It's hard to trust when you don't have something bigger to hold on to. And here's where it gets real. Even if you say you don't believe in God, everyone worships something. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's status. Maybe it's another person. Maybe it's yourself. But whatever you put above everything else, that's your God. And whatever you worship, that's what controls you. If money is your God, you will sacrifice and do everything to have more of it. If approval is your God, you'll bend over backwards to get people to like you. If a relationship is your God, you just might lose yourself trying to make someone else happy. So ask yourself, what do I actually worship? What do I put above everything else? Because that's shaping your relationships more than you realize. At the end of the day, this isn't about religion. It's about your connection to something bigger. When you have that real relationship with God or with whatever source of love or purpose you believe in, it changes everything. You stop believing in love and start living it. You stop fearing trust and start giving it. You stop holding back and you start giving grace. Not because you have to, but because it is you. And that changes every relationship in your life. So whether you believe in God or doubt Him or are still trying to figure it out, I hope this made you think. Because your faith, your beliefs, and your relationship with something bigger than yourself, it's not just personal. It's relational. And if you want better relationships, maybe it's time to start there. So let's talk about it. Drop a comment below. What's your take on faith and relationships? And if this hits home, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one.